The first shuttle from the Council fleet touched down with the silence of falling snow, its landing so gentle that Marcus barely felt the vibration through the station's deck plates. Through the observation window, he watched as beings that defied easy description emerged from the craft. Elder Thraindar was unlike anything Marcus had imagined. Standing nearly 3 meters tall, with flowing robes that seemed to be made of captured starlight, the ancient being moved with a grace that spoke of millennia of experience. Its face was vaguely reptilian but bore features that suggested both wisdom and kindness. Most striking were its eyes, deep pools of swirling color that seemed to hold the depths of space itself. 2 other council members accompanied the elder. One appeared to be from the same species as Zarahai, but larger and bearing elaborate markings that pulsed in synchronized patterns. The other was something that challenged Marcus's understanding of biology entirely, a being of living crystal that refracted light into impossible patterns as it moved. Zara Hay greeted them in the station's main bay, where Marcus had hastily cleared space for the meeting. The reunion between her and her fellow council members involved complex gestures and harmonics that the translation system couldn't interpret, but the emotion was unmistakable. Relief, joy, and something deeper that reminded Marcus of a family gathering after a long separation. When the formal greetings concluded, Elder Thraindar approached Marcus directly. The ancient being's presence was overwhelming, not threatening, but carrying such weight of experience and wisdom that Marcus felt like a child meeting a living legend. Human Marcus Chen, the elder spoke, its voice carrying harmonics that resonated in Marcus's bones. We have reviewed the records that Navigator Zarahai transmitted. Your actions have created ripples that extend far beyond your current understanding. Marcus tried to maintain his composure despite feeling completely out of his depth. I just did what felt right. Anyone would have helped. The crystalline being chimed like wind through glass, and the translation system rendered its words with clinical precision. Analysis indicates this statement demonstrates fundamental misunderstanding of typical species behavior. Statistical evaluation of 847 documented first contact scenarios shows 94.7% result in capture, exploitation, or elimination of disadvantaged party. Keeper Veltar speaks truth, Elder Thraindar continued, gesturing toward the crystal being. Your species is unknown to us, yet you display characteristics that mark you as exceptional among star-traveling races. This has implications that extend beyond individual gratitude. The larger member of Zarahai's species stepped forward, its markings shifting to formal patterns. I am War Commander Ashkente. The information that Navigator Zarahai carried concerns imminent threat to 17 worlds. Without her survival, billions would have died unwarned. Your intervention has prevented catastrophe on galactic scale. Marcus felt the weight of this revelation settling on him. I had no idea the stakes were so high. I just saw someone who needed help. This makes your actions more significant, not less, Elder Thraindar replied. To act without knowledge of reward or consequence, purely from instinct to preserve life. This demonstrates evolutionary development that few species achieve. Zarahai moved to stand beside Marcus, her presence offering comfort in the overwhelming situation. I have explained to human Marcus that ancient protocols create binding debt. He protests that no reward is necessary, but this only demonstrates worthiness of highest honors. Elder Thraindar's eyes swirled with what might have been amusement. Indeed, one who seeks no reward often proves most deserving of it. The ancient being paused, studying Marcus with an intensity that made him feel transparent. We have reached decision regarding appropriate response to your actions. The elder gestured, and a holographic display materialized in the air between them. It showed star charts of a scale that made Marcus dizzy. Thousands of worlds connected by trade routes and communication networks. A civilization spanning multiple spiral arms of the galaxy. The Ascended Council governs alliance of 47 species across 12,000 worlds, Elder Thraindar explained. We have existed in current form for 8,000 years, having transcended the wars and conflicts that typically destroy younger civilizations. We maintain peace through strength, wisdom, and careful evaluation of emerging species. The display zoomed in on one section, highlighting what appeared to be human space. Marcus was surprised to see how small human territory looked compared to the vast council domains. Your species has been under observation since you achieved faster-than-light travel, War Commander Ashkente added. Initial evaluations were concerning. High aggression indices, territorial expansion patterns, exploitation of resources without regard for sustainability. Standard projections suggested humanity would follow typical path of self-destruction within 2 centuries. Marcus felt a chill at the clinical assessment. But we're not all like that. There are good people, people who care about doing the right thing. This is precisely what your actions have demonstrated, Elder Thraindar said, its tone warming slightly. You have provided evidence that humanity possesses potential for transcendence beyond initial projections. This changes everything. Keeper Veltar chimed again, and the translation rendered its words with what seemed like excitement. Proposal under consideration would establish humanity as protectorate species under Council guidance. Accelerated development protocols could advance human civilization by thousands of years within single generation. The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. You're talking about uplifting our entire species? We speak of sharing knowledge that would end disease, poverty, war, and environmental destruction on human worlds, Zarahai explained. Technologies that would open infinite resources of space to your people. Wisdom gained through millennia of peaceful cooperation between species. Elder Thraindar raised one elongated hand. However, such gifts cannot be given lightly. They must be earned through demonstration of readiness. Your actions have shown that at least some humans possess the moral development necessary for such advancement. The holographic display shifted to show what appeared to be a formal document written in symbols that hurt Marcus's eyes to look at directly. We offer you choice, human Marcus Chen. Accept role as first human ambassador to the Ascended Council and begin process of establishing formal relations between our civilizations. Your species will be evaluated for inclusion in the greater community of stars. Marcus stared at the alien text, trying to process what was being offered. What does that mean exactly? What would be expected of me? You would come with us, Zarahai said softly. Learn our ways, study our technologies and philosophies. Serve as bridge between human understanding and council wisdom. In time you would return to your people as herald of new age for humanity. War Commander Ashikente's markings shifted to what Marcus was learning to recognize as emphasis. This is unprecedented honor. No species has been offered council protectorate status based on actions of single individual. Usually such evaluation requires centuries of observation and testing. But my blood saved her life somehow, Marcus protested. That was just biological chance, not some kind of moral achievement. Elder Thraindar's eyes swirled with deeper colors. You misunderstand the significance. Your blood did not save her through biological compatibility. Our species are far too different for such simple solution. You saved her through force of will and determination that your primitive medical intervention would succeed. The revelation left Marcus speechless. Keeper Veltar chimed softly, and its words carried implications that made reality seem to shift around him. What you accomplished was not medical procedure, but act of psychic resonance. Your absolute conviction that she would live, combined with willingness to sacrifice your own life essence, created quantum probability adjustment. You literally willed her survival into existence. Marcus looked at Zarahai, seeing her in an entirely new light. That's impossible. Humans don't have psychic abilities. Most humans do not, Elder Thraindar agreed, but some do, and they are the key to your species' potential for transcendence. You, Marcus Chen, are far more than you know. 3 days passed before she attempted to communicate again. Marcus had spent the time ensuring she had everything she needed, adjusting the atmospheric mixture in his quarters, providing water that seemed to agree with her physiology, and even attempting to synthesize nutrients that might sustain her alien metabolism. Her recovery was remarkable, far faster than any human would heal from such severe injuries. On the morning of the 4th day, she stood for the first time since the crash. Marcus watched nervously as she tested her balance, her forearms moving in a complex pattern that reminded him of a dancer warming up. The silver markings on her skin shifted and pulsed in what he was beginning to recognize as expressions of different emotions or states of being. She approached the communications console in his quarters and began manipulating the controls with surprising familiarity. Within minutes, she had accessed the station's language databases and translation protocols. Her first words, spoken through the computer's voice synthesis system, were hauntingly beautiful despite the mechanical delivery. You gave life essence freely to unknown other being. This action carries weight beyond your understanding, human Marcus Chen. The fact that she knew his name startled him until he realized she must have accessed the station's personnel files. What surprised him more was the formal, almost ritualistic way she spoke, as if his actions had significance beyond simple medical intervention. "I couldn't let you die," Marcus replied simply. Any decent person would have done the same thing. Her skin markings flared brighter for a moment, and she made a sound through her own vocal cords that the computer couldn't translate. When she spoke again, her tone carried what sounded like amazement. "This translator cannot convey the meaning properly. Your species, you act from instinct to preserve life even when it brings risk to self. This is not common among star-traveling races." Over the following hours, she told him her story. Her name was something the computer rendered as Zarahai, though she explained the actual pronunciation involved harmonics beyond human vocal range. She was a navigator for what she called the Ascended Council, a coalition of ancient species that had evolved beyond the need for physical warfare centuries ago. Her ship had been attacked by raiders from a younger, more aggressive species called the Devourers, who saw the Council's peaceful nature as weakness. She had been carrying sensitive information about Devourer movements when they ambushed her trade route. The crash on Kepler 442b had been the result of a desperate escape through an unstable wormhole. "The information I carry must reach the Council," she explained, her markings taking on urgent patterns. "The Devourers plan to attack multiple worlds simultaneously. Billions of lives hang in balance." Marcus felt the weight of galactic politics settling on his shoulders. "Can you repair your ship?" Zarahai's markings dimmed with what he interpreted as sadness. "The core is beyond repair with available resources. But this is not primary concern now." She moved to face him directly, all four hands clasped in front of her in what seemed to be a formal posture. "You have bound us, Marcus Chen. By freely giving life essence to preserve unknown other being, you have created debt that extends beyond individual to entire genetic line and species affiliation." "I don't understand," Marcus said, though something in her tone suggested this was more significant than simple gratitude. In ancient times, before Council species achieved transcendence, such acts were rare and sacred. To give life essence to unknown other being without expectation of return was considered ultimate expression of evolved consciousness. Those who performed such acts were granted highest honors and protections. She paused, her markings shifting to patterns Marcus hadn't seen before. Complex spirals and interconnecting lines that seemed to tell a story in light and color. These customs remain binding among Council species. "You have saved life of Zarahai, navigator of first rank, descended from the original architects of the Ascended Council. The debt cannot be discharged with simple gratitude." Marcus felt increasingly uncomfortable with the direction this conversation was taking. "Look, I appreciate the thanks, but I really don't need any reward. I did what anyone would do." "This statement demonstrates lack of understanding," Zarahai replied, her tone becoming almost gentle. "Your species is unknown to Council databases, yet you display traits that would mark you as worthy of highest ranks among our civilization. The debt must be honored according to ancient protocols." She approached the communications console again and began inputting what looked like a complex series of codes. "I am transmitting priority beacon to Council fleet. They will come." "Wait," Marcus said, alarm growing in his chest. "I can't have alien fleets showing up here. This is a corporate mining operation. There are protocols, regulations, first contact procedures." Zarahai turned those large, dark eyes on him with an expression that might have been amusement. "You concern yourself with lesser authorities when you have just become subject of Council attention. Your corporate overlords will find their protests carry little weight when faced with species that have mastered forces beyond their comprehension." The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. Zarahai worked tirelessly to establish communication with what she called the emergency response protocols of the Council fleet. Meanwhile, Marcus tried to figure out how to explain to his corporate supervisors that he had just accidentally initiated first contact with an advanced alien civilization. The mining station's long-range sensors detected the Council ships long before they arrived. 3 vessels materialized in orbit around Kepler 442b. Their technology so advanced that they had apparently traveled faster than light, without creating any of the gravitational disturbances that human FTL drives produced. "They are here," Zarahai announced, her markings bright with what Marcus now recognized as excitement. The harmony of voices, flagship of the exploration fleet, commanded by Elder Thraindar, who has lived for over 2,000 of your years. Marcus stared at the sensor readings showing ships that dwarfed anything in the human fleet. Each vessel was easily the size of a city, and the energy signatures they produced suggested technology that bordered on the incomprehensible. "What happens now?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Zarahai moved closer to him, placing one of her hands gently on his shoulder. The gesture was becoming familiar, a sign of comfort and reassurance that transcended species barriers. "Now you learn that simple act of compassion has consequences that ripple across the galaxy," she said softly, "and you discover that humanity's introduction to the greater community of stars will be far different than your leaders ever imagined." Marcus Chen wiped the sweat from his forehead as he adjusted the solar panel array on the mining station's outer hull. 3 months into his contract on Kepler 442b, and he still wasn't used to the planet's dual suns casting strange shadows across the rocky landscape. The pay was good enough to ignore the isolation. Though lately, even the credits seemed less appealing than the thought of human conversation. The mining operation extracted rare minerals from the planet's crust, but Marcus often felt like he was the one being slowly worn away by the endless routine. Wake up, check the automated systems, repair whatever had broken overnight, eat synthetic food, sleep. Repeat. The company had promised rotation every 6 months, but 3 miners had already extended their contracts. The solitude did something to people out here. As he tightened the final bolt on the panel housing, his proximity alarm chimed through his helmet comm. Marcus paused, scanning the horizon. Nothing moved across the barren landscape except dust devils dancing in the distance. False alarms were common with all the electromagnetic interference from the mining equipment, but protocol demanded investigation. He climbed down from the maintenance platform and walked toward the perimeter sensors, his boots crunching on the crystalline soil. The reading showed something large had triggered the motion detectors near the eastern ridge, about 2 kilometers from the station. Marcus grabbed his scanner and headed for the all-terrain vehicle. The ride across the rough terrain took 20 minutes, bouncing over rocks and weaving between the strange metallic formations that jutted from the ground like frozen lightning. As he crested the ridge, Marcus saw something that made him slam on the brakes. A spacecraft lay partially buried in a crater, its hull blackened and twisted from what looked like weapons fire. The design was unlike anything in the human databases, sleek curves instead of angular efficiency, with a hull that seemed to shift color in the dual sunlight. Steam rose from several breach points where atmosphere was venting into the thin air. Marcus parked the vehicle and approached carefully, scanner in hand. The readings showed the ship's power core was stable but failing, and there were life signs inside. Weak ones. He found the airlock mechanism after several minutes of examination. The alien technology responded to pressure, and the hatch cycled open with a soft hiss. Emergency lighting cast an eerie blue glow through the corridors as Marcus made his way deeper into the ship. The life signs led him to what appeared to be the bridge. There, slumped over a control console, was a figure that made Marcus's breath catch in his throat. She, and somehow he was certain it was female despite the obvious alien features, was humanoid but clearly not human. Her skin had a pale blue tint with silver markings that pulsed weakly like a dying heartbeat. 4 arms hung limply at her sides, and her elongated skull suggested a larger brain capacity than humans possessed. Blood, darker than human blood but unmistakably the same concept, pooled beneath her body. A piece of twisted metal from the ship's hull had punctured her torso, and her breathing was so shallow that Marcus almost missed it entirely. His medical training from his time in the military kicked in. The wound was severe, and she had clearly lost significant blood. Without immediate intervention, she would die within minutes. Marcus ran back to his vehicle for the emergency medical kit, his mind racing through possibilities. When he returned, her condition had worsened. The silver markings on her skin had faded to almost nothing, and her breathing was barely detectable. Marcus cleaned the wound as best he could and managed to remove the metal fragment. But the bleeding wouldn't stop. She needed a transfusion, but he had no idea if alien and human blood were compatible. Looking at her dying form, Marcus made a decision that would change everything. He pulled out a medical needle and tubing from his kit, sterilized everything he could, and connected himself to her circulatory system. If their blood wasn't compatible, it might kill them both. If he did nothing, she would definitely die. The first few minutes were terrifying. Marcus watched for any signs of rejection or adverse reaction as his blood flowed into her body. Her alien physiology was so different that he couldn't tell if it was working until the silver markings on her skin began to pulse slightly brighter. For 2 hours, Marcus maintained the improvised transfusion, monitoring both their vital signs as best he could with his limited equipment. Gradually, her breathing strengthened, and the pulsing patterns on her skin returned to what he assumed was normal. When she finally seemed stable, he carefully disconnected the tubing and treated both their wounds. She remained unconscious, but her condition had clearly improved. Marcus carried her to his vehicle, being careful not to aggravate her injuries, and drove back to the mining station. He set up a makeshift medical bay in his quarters, using environmental controls to approximate what he hoped were suitable atmospheric conditions for her species. As night fell on the alien world, Marcus sat beside her makeshift bed, watching for any signs of consciousness. He had violated every first contact protocol in the book, potentially exposed himself to unknown pathogens, and definitely exceeded his authority as a mining technician. But looking at her peaceful face, he felt no regret. The silver markings on her skin had returned to their full brightness, creating intricate patterns that seemed almost artistic. Her breathing was steady now, and occasionally her eyes would move beneath closed lids as if she were dreaming. Marcus found himself wondering what kind of dreams an alien might have. He dozed off in his chair sometime after midnight, exhausted from the day's events. When he woke a few hours later, 4 large, dark eyes were staring at him with an intelligence that made his heart skip a beat. She was awake, and she was studying him with an intensity that suggested she understood exactly what he had done for her. Marcus sat up slowly, not wanting to startle her. She tried to speak, but only a soft whistling sound emerged from her throat. Then she did something that surprised him even more than her alien appearance. She reached out with one of her 4 hands and gently touched his arm where he had drawn blood to save her life. The gesture was unmistakably one of gratitude, transcending any language barrier between their species. As their eyes met in the dim light of the mining station, Marcus realized that his lonely existence on this remote planet had just become significantly more complicated. The revelation about his psychic abilities left Marcus reeling. He sat in stunned silence as the council members exchanged communications in harmonics beyond human hearing, their markings and crystalline chimes creating a symphony of alien discourse that somehow felt meaningful even without translation. Elder Thraindar finally turned back to him, its ancient eyes reflecting compassion for his obvious confusion. "We understand this is overwhelming. Your species lacks context for such abilities because they have been dormant for most of human history. Only in recent generations have they begun to manifest, and rarely with such dramatic results." "How is that possible?" Marcus asked, his voice barely steady. "If humans had psychic potential, wouldn't we know about it?" Keeper Veltar chimed a response that the translator rendered with unusual emotional inflection. "Evolution of consciousness follows patterns observed across galaxy. Species develop technological advancement first, psychic abilities later. Humans currently exist at transition point where small percentage manifest enhanced capabilities." War Commander Ashkente stepped forward, its battle-scarred markings pulsing with intensity. "This explains anomalies in recent human conflicts. Reports of soldiers surviving impossible situations through sheer will, medics achieving miraculous healings, leaders inspiring impossible victories. Your military records contain dozens of unexplained incidents that demonstrate emerging psychic phenomena." Zarahai moved closer to Marcus, her presence somehow calming the storm of questions in his mind. "When you connected your life essence to mine, you did more than share blood. You created psychic bridge between our consciousness. I felt your determination, your absolute refusal to let me die. That force of will altered probability itself." Marcus stared at his hands, trying to reconcile this impossible information with his mundane existence as a mining technician. "I don't feel any different. I don't feel like I have special abilities. Most humans with emerging abilities remain unaware of them," Elder Thraindar explained. "They manifest as intuition, luck, small coincidences that favor positive outcomes. Only under extreme stress or emotional intensity do they become obvious, as happened when you saved Navigator Zarahai." The elder gestured, and another holographic display appeared, showing brain scan patterns that looked vaguely human, but with additional structures Marcus didn't recognize. These are neural maps of council species with fully developed psychic abilities. Compare them to your brain patterns, which we scanned while you slept. A second image appeared alongside the first, and Marcus felt his breath catch. The resemblance was unmistakable. His brain showed the same additional structures, though they appeared smaller and less developed. Your neural architecture contains dormant pathways for consciousness expansion, Keeper Veltar chimed. With proper training and guidance, these could be activated and strengthened. You could learn to heal others through directed will, to sense emotions and intentions across vast distances, to manipulate probability in ways that would seem miraculous to other humans. War Commander Ashkente's markings shifted to what Marcus was beginning to recognize as approval. More importantly, you could serve as teacher for others of your species who possess similar potential. The gift multiplies when shared with those ready to receive it. Marcus felt the weight of destiny settling on his shoulders like a physical burden. And if I refuse? What happens to humanity then? Elder Thrandar's expression became grave. Without guidance, emerging psychic abilities often manifest destructively. Individuals go insane from voices they cannot understand, from visions they cannot interpret. Governments try to weaponize abilities they do not comprehend. Eventually, the chaos tears civilizations apart from within. We have witnessed this, patterned 17 times across the galaxy. Zarahai added softly. Species that reach the threshold of psychic evolution without proper mentorship invariably destroy themselves. The lucky ones simply stagnate and never develop further. The unlucky ones do not survive. The holographic display shifted to show images that made Marcus's stomach clench. Worlds reduced to rubble, space stations torn apart by forces that defied physics, entire populations driven mad by uncontrolled psychic feedback. The devastation was on a scale that challenged comprehension. However, Elder Thrandar continued, its tone becoming more hopeful. Species that receive guidance during transition period achieve remarkable things. Poverty becomes impossible when individuals can will resources into existence. Disease disappears when healers can restructure matter at cellular level. War becomes obsolete when empaths can feel the pain they would cause others. Marcus thought of his lonely existence on the mining station, of the corporate greed that had driven him to this isolated world, of the news reports about conflicts and suffering across human space. The possibility of ending such things seemed too good to be true. What would the training involve? He asked, surprised by his own willingness to consider the offer. Keeper Veltar chimed with what sounded like excitement. Initial phase would require residence aboard council ship for approximately 1 standard year. You would study meditation techniques developed over millennia, learn to perceive and manipulate quantum probability fields, practice healing methods that work at fundamental level of reality. You would also study our history, our philosophies, our approaches to governance and conflict resolution, War Commander Ashkente added. Knowledge that humanity will need when your species joins galactic community. Zarahai stepped even closer, and Marcus could feel something, a warmth, a presence that seemed to extend beyond her physical form. More than that, you would learn to use the connection we forged when you saved my life. Our consciousness are now linked in ways that transcend physical distance. I can teach you things that no other council member could. What kind of things? Marcus asked, though part of him already suspected the answer. How to sense the true intentions of others regardless of what they say, she replied, her markings pulsing with gentle light. How to heal not just physical wounds but emotional and spiritual damage. How to inspire others to become their best selves simply through your presence. Elder Thrandar watched this exchange with obvious interest. The psychic bond between you and Navigator Zarahai is itself unprecedented. Never before has a member of an uncontacted species formed such a connection with a council member. This suggests your potential may exceed even our most optimistic projections. Marcus felt something stirring within him, a sense of purpose that had been missing from his life for longer than he cared to admit. The mining station, his corporate contract, even his plans to return to Earth. All of it suddenly seemed small and meaningless compared to what was being offered. "If I agree to this," he said slowly, "what happens to my old life, my family, my friends, the people who will wonder what became of me?" "Your absence will be explained as mining accident," War Commander Ashkente replied matter-of-factly. "Your corporate employers will receive compensation for lost equipment and personnel. Your family will be provided for financially, though they will believe you to be dead." The casual way the war commander discussed erasing his existence sent a chill through Marcus. "That seems extreme." "It is necessary," Elder Thraindar said gently. "Knowledge of our existence must remain limited until humanity is ready for full contact. Premature revelation would cause chaos that could set your species' development back by centuries." Zara High placed one of her hands on his arm, and Marcus felt a wave of reassurance flow through their connection. "When you return to your people as ambassador, you will be reunited with those you care about. They will understand that your apparent death was necessary for humanity's future." Marcus looked around the mining station that had been his prison for 3 months, then at the beings who were offering him a chance to help transform his entire species. The choice seemed impossible. Abandon everything he had known for the promise of something beyond imagination. But as he met Zara High's dark eyes and felt the psychic warmth of their connection, Marcus realized the choice had already been made the moment he decided to save her life. The councilship harmony of voices was a marvel that challenged every assumption Marcus had about space travel. Unlike the cramped utilitarian vessels of human design, the ship felt more like a living organism than a machine. Corridors curved organically through spaces that seemed larger inside than the external dimensions should have allowed. Gardens flourished in chambers where artificial gravity created impossible. Waterfalls that fell upward before cycling back. Through hidden channels, Marcus's quarters were larger than his entire apartment back on Earth, with walls that could become transparent to reveal the swirling colors of hyperspace, or display any environment he could imagine. But it was the subtle presence he felt throughout the ship that truly amazed him. The sense that the vessel itself was somehow aware of its inhabitants' needs and moods. "The ship's consciousness is young by council standards," Zara High explained as she showed him through the living areas. "Only 300 years old. It still enjoys discovering new patterns of thought and emotion among its passengers." Marcus paused, processing this casual revelation. "The ship is alive. All council vessels achieve consciousness given sufficient time and complexity," Elder Thraindar replied, appearing behind them with the silent grace that Marcus was learning to associate with beings who had transcended purely physical existence. Harmony of Voices volunteered to serve as your training environment because it finds human neural patterns fascinating. As if responding to its name, the ship's lighting pulsed gently around them, and Marcus felt a presence touch the edges of his mind. Curious, ancient despite its relative youth, and somehow amused by his amazement. The training began immediately. Keeper Veltar led him through basic meditation techniques that were designed to quiet human thought patterns and allow deeper awareness to emerge. The crystalline being's approach was methodical and patient, breaking down complex concepts into steps that Marcus's unaugmented consciousness could follow. "Human minds generate excessive neural static," Veltar chimed during one particularly difficult session. "Constant internal dialogue prevents perception of quantum probability fields. Must learn to achieve silence before attempting manipulation." Marcus struggled with the meditation at first. His engineer's mind wanted to analyze and categorize everything, to find logical explanations for experiences that transcended normal causality. But gradually, under Veltar's guidance, he began to experience moments of profound stillness, where the universe seemed to reveal hidden patterns. War Commander Ashkente handled the more physical aspects of his training. Despite its peaceful appearance, the Council maintained military forces to defend against threats like the Devourers. Ashkente taught Marcus to channel his emerging abilities through controlled stress and physical challenges. Psychic abilities strengthen under pressure, the War Commander explained as Marcus attempted to levitate a training sphere through pure will. Combat situations, medical emergencies, moments of extreme emotion, these create optimal conditions for consciousness expansion. The sphere wobbled slightly before crashing to the deck again. Marcus wiped sweat from his forehead, frustrated by his lack of progress. I'm not sure I'm cut out for this. Maybe you overestimated my potential. Ashkente's marking shifted to what Marcus had learned indicated mild disapproval. Self-doubt is luxury you cannot afford. Millions of your species may depend on abilities you develop here. Try again. But it was Zarahai who became his most important teacher. Their psychic connection, forged when he saved her life, provided a direct channel for knowledge transfer that bypassed the usual limitations of language and cultural differences. During their training sessions, she could literally share her perceptions with him, allowing him to experience consciousness expansion through her more developed abilities. Feel the quantum flux, she whispered during one such session. Her mental voice clear despite their physical separation across the ship. Reality is not fixed. It responds to conscious observation and intent. You proved this when you willed my survival despite medical impossibility. Marcus closed his eyes and extended his awareness as she had taught him. Gradually, he began to perceive the probability streams that flowed through every moment, potential futures branching and merging like rivers in a vast delta. With careful intent, he could nudge outcomes toward more favorable possibilities. The training sphere lifted smoothly from the deck and hovered steady in the air. Excellent. Zarahai's voice carried satisfaction and something deeper, pride in his progress that warmed him through their connection. You begin to understand that will shapes reality as much as reality shapes will. Months passed in this intensive education. Marcus learned to heal minor injuries by visualizing damaged tissue returning to perfect health. He discovered he could sense the emotional states of other beings, even across the vast distances within the ship. Most remarkably, he began to understand why the Council had remained peaceful for millennia, when you could feel the suffering your actions caused others. Violence became literally painful to contemplate. During quiet moments between training sessions, Elder Thraindar shared the deeper history of the galaxy, civilizations that had risen and fallen, the slow evolution of consciousness that had led to the Council's formation, the delicate balance that maintained peace among species with godlike capabilities. Power without wisdom destroys, the Elder explained during one such conversation. This is why psychic abilities emerge gradually in most species. Consciousness must develop moral foundation before acquiring ability to reshape reality at will. But humans are developing these abilities faster than normal, Marcus observed. You said we're at a transition point. Elder Thraindar's eyes swirled with what might have been concern. Indeed. Humanity faces compressed evolution due to external pressures, environmental destruction, resource depletion, social upheaval. Your species must transcend its limitations quickly or face extinction. The weight of this responsibility sometimes threatened to overwhelm Marcus. During his darkest moments, when the training seemed impossible and the scope of what was expected felt crushing, he would feel Zarahai's presence through their connection, steady, supportive, reminding him that he was not facing this burden alone. Their relationship had evolved beyond teacher and student into something deeper and more complex. The psychic bond created when he saved her life had grown stronger with time and training, until they could share thoughts and emotions as easily as spoken words. But there was something else developing between them, something that transcended species boundaries and challenged both their preconceptions about what was possible. The connection we share is unprecedented, Zarahai admitted during one of their evening conversations in the ship's observation lounge. They sat watching the swirling patterns of hyperspace, her four hands moving in complex gestures as she tried to explain something that had no equivalent in human experience. Council members sometimes form emotional bonds with beings from other species, but always with those who share similar levels of consciousness development. You were barely aware of your psychic potential when we met, yet the bond formed instantly and completely. Marcus studied her profile as she spoke, noting how the ship's ambient lighting made her skin markings pulse in rhythm with her emotions. What does that mean for us? For what we're becoming? She turned to face him, her dark eyes reflecting depths that seemed to contain entire galaxies. I do not know, but I believe it means you are destined for something greater than even the Council has foreseen. As if summoned by her words, harmony of voices pulsed gently around them, and Marcus felt the ship's vast consciousness touch his mind with something that felt remarkably like agreement. Whatever his ultimate destiny, He was no longer facing it as the same lonely human who had found a dying alien in a crashed ship. He had become something new, something that bridged the gap between humanity's violent past and its transcendent future. The question that haunted him as he progressed through his training was whether he would be strong enough to help his entire species make the same transformation before it was too late. The emergency began without warning, as emergencies often do. Marcus was deep in meditation when alarms echoed through harmony of voices, their harmonic frequencies designed to alert without causing panic. He opened his eyes to find the ship's consciousness manifesting as patterns of light that pulsed urgently across every surface. Sci-Fi appeared in his quarters within moments, her markings bright with alarm. Devourer fleet has been detected approaching human space. They move faster than our projections indicated possible. Elder Thrandar's voice resonated through the ship's communication system, carrying the weight of immediate crisis. All personnel to emergency stations. We are reversing course to intercept before they reach populated human worlds. Marcus followed Sci-Fi through corridors that reshaped themselves to provide the most efficient route to the command center. The ship's consciousness was clearly in crisis mode, optimizing every system for maximum performance. When they reached the bridge, Marcus saw displays showing tactical information that made his blood run cold. 17 Devourer warships, each the size of a human city, were cutting through space toward the Sol system. Their energy signatures suggested weapons capable of sterilizing entire planets, and their formation indicated they were prepared for systematic destruction rather than conquest. How long until they reach Earth? Marcus asked, his enhanced abilities already allowing him to process the tactical data faster than should have been possible for an untrained human. War Commander. Ashkente manipulated holographic controls with forearms working in perfect coordination. At current velocity, 47 hours. Council reinforcements cannot arrive for 6 days minimum. Keeper Veltar chimed with distress harmonics that made the ship's hull ring like a struck bell. Human military forces insufficient to delay Devourer advance. Probability of successful planetary defense approaches 0 without intervention. Marcus felt Sci-Fi's presence in his mind, sharing her own analysis of the situation. Through their connection, he could perceive the tactical calculations that her enhanced consciousness was running. Millions of possible scenarios playing out in seconds, each one ending in catastrophe for humanity. There has to be something we can do, Marcus said, his desperation clear in his voice. We can't just watch my entire species get wiped out. Elder Thrandar turned those ancient eyes on him, and Marcus saw something unexpected there, hope mixed with reluctant calculation. There is one possibility, but it would require you to attempt something far beyond your current training level. The Elder gestured, and the tactical display zoomed in on the lead Devourer ship. Its massive bulk bristled with weapons that could crack continents. But Marcus noticed something else, patterns in its energy signature that seemed almost familiar. Devourer consciousness operates differently from Council species, Elder Thrandar explained. They suppress individual identity in favor of collective will. Each ship contains thousands of beings linked in forced psychic network, all controlled by dominant alpha personality. Ashkente's markings shifted to what Marcus recognized as grim determination. In theory, sufficiently powerful psychic could disrupt network by inserting foreign consciousness pattern, force Devourers to experience individual identity and moral awareness they have suppressed. Marcus felt understanding dawn with a mixture of terror and possibility. You want me to psych link with an entire Devourer fleet? Not the entire fleet, Sci-Fi said softly, her mental voice carrying love and fear in equal measure. Just the command ship. If you could force its crew to experience individuality and empathy, the shock would spread through their linked network. They might remember what they were before the collective consumed them. Keeper Veltar chimed with technical analysis. Procedure would require amplification beyond safe parameters. Subject would need to channel psychic energy through ship's consciousness matrix, while maintaining connection to navigator Sci-Fi for stability. Risk of permanent mental damage approaches certainty. The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. To attempt something this dangerous, he would need to open his mind completely to forces that could easily destroy his sanity. Even if he succeeded, the psychic backlash might leave him a vegetable for the rest of his life. I have to try, he said simply. I can't let billions of people die when there's even a chance I could stop it. Elder Thranedar studied him with an intensity that seemed to peer into his soul. You understand the likely consequences? Success would save your species, but probably cost you everything that makes you yourself. Marcus thought of Earth, of the billions of humans who had no idea they were about to face extinction. Children playing in parks, scientists working to unlock the universe's secrets, artists creating beauty that might never be seen again. The weight of their potential loss dwarfed any concern for his personal survival. Some things are worth the risk, he replied, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through him. Zarahai moved to stand beside him, her presence a warm constant in his mind. You will not face this alone. Our bond will anchor you, give you a point of stability when the collective consciousness tries to subsume your identity. The next few hours passed in frantic preparation. Harmony of Voices reconfigured its entire consciousness matrix to serve as an amplifier for Marcus's psychic abilities. The ship's ancient artificial intelligence expressed what seemed like both excitement and terror at the prospect of channeling so much mental energy through its neural networks. Keeper Veltar worked with Elder Thranedar to establish protective protocols that might preserve Marcus's core identity during the attempt. War Commander Ashkante coordinated with other council ships to provide support, though everyone understood that success or failure would ultimately depend on one human's ability to maintain his sense of self while touching an alien collective consciousness. As they approached the Devourer fleet, Marcus took his position in the ship's consciousness chamber, a spherical room where the vessel's awareness was most concentrated. Crystalline matrices surrounded him, their surfaces reflecting his face back in infinite variations. Zarahai stood at the chamber's edge, her own consciousness fully open to support him through their psychic bond. Remember who you are, she whispered, her mental voice the last thing he heard before the amplification began. Power flowed through Marcus's mind like liquid lightning. His consciousness expanded beyond anything he had experienced during training, reaching across space toward the lead Devourer ship. As his awareness touched the alien vessel, he felt the crushing weight of the collective. Thousands of individual minds forced into uniform thought patterns, their personal identities buried beneath layers of imposed unity. The collective noticed his intrusion immediately. Alien thoughts pressed against his consciousness like a tsunami of rage and hunger, trying to drown his individual identity in their unified hate. For a terrifying moment, Marcus felt himself beginning to dissolve into the mass of alien minds. Then Zarahai's presence blazed through their connection, a beacon of individual identity that reminded him of who he was and why he was fighting. Anchored by her love and support, Marcus pushed deeper into the collective consciousness, searching for the suppressed personalities buried within. He found them in the deepest layers of the alien's shared mind, fragments of individual identity that had been forcibly sublimated, but never completely destroyed. With careful precision, Marcus began to stimulate these dormant self-concepts, feeding them psychic energy until they began to reassert themselves. The effect was immediate and catastrophic for the collective. As individual devourers began to remember their personal identities, the unified consciousness that had driven them toward Earth started to fracture. Confusion spread through the psychic network as beings who had not experienced independent thought in decades suddenly found themselves capable of questioning their orders. Some remembered loved ones they had abandoned when they joined the collective. Others recalled moral principles they had surrendered in exchange for power. All of them began to experience the emotional weight of the destruction they had planned to inflict on an innocent species. The command ship shuddered as its crew struggled with the return of individual conscience. Across the fleet, other vessels began to slow as their own crews experienced the psychic shockwaves spreading through the network. But the effort was destroying Marcus. The alien collective fought back with overwhelming force, trying to crush the foreign consciousness that was disrupting their unity. Only Zarahai's presence through their bond kept him anchored to his own identity, as the psychic backlash threatened to tear his mind apart. In the final moments before the strain became too much to bear, Marcus made one last desperate push, broadcasting a single message through the entire Devourer network. The memory of what it felt like to save a life instead of destroying one. The joy of connection and compassion that he had experienced when he first helped Zarahai. The collective consciousness shattered completely. Marcus drifted in darkness for what felt like eternities, His consciousness scattered across dimensions he had never imagined existed. Fragments of his identity floated like islands in an ocean of alien thoughts and memories. He remembered being a child on Earth, learning to fix machinery with his father. He remembered standing on an alien mining station, watching dual suns paint strange shadows across crystalline soil. He remembered touching a vast collective mind and feeling it shatter into a million individual pieces. But threading through all these memories like a golden wire was Zarahai's presence, calling him back to himself with patient love and unwavering determination. Through their psychic bond, she anchored the scattered pieces of his personality and slowly, carefully, helped him reassemble them into something recognizable as Marcus Chen. When he finally opened his eyes, he was lying in the medical bay of Harmony of Voices. The ship's consciousness had created a healing environment that felt like being cradled in gentle starlight, and the presence he felt from the vessel carried relief and joy at his recovery. "How long?" he whispered, his voice rough from disuse. Zarahai sat beside his bed, her markings glowing with subdued patterns of exhaustion and concern. 17 days. Your consciousness was so scattered that even Elder Thraindar began to doubt recovery was possible. Marcus tried to sit up and discovered that his body felt different, lighter somehow, as if some fundamental change had occurred at the cellular level. The Devourers? Did it work? Beyond our most optimistic projections, she replied, her mental voice carrying wonder and pride. The collective consciousness has completely disbanded. Individual Devourers across the fleet experienced return of personal identity and moral awareness. Most are now requesting asylum with the Council, seeking to make amends for actions they committed while part of the collective. The implications slowly penetrated Marcus's still recovering mind. They're not a threat anymore. War Commander Ashkente appeared in the doorway, its markings bright with what Marcus had learned to recognize as respect. More than that, many possess advanced technical knowledge that they suppressed while part of collective. They wish to share this information as reparation for their planned crimes against humanity. Elder Thraindar materialized beside the War Commander, with the graceful silence that marked its presence. Your actions have not only saved your species, human Marcus Chen. You have also freed thousands of beings from mental slavery that has lasted for centuries. The ramifications extend far beyond what any of us anticipated. Marcus felt overwhelmed by the scope of what had apparently been accomplished. I don't remember much after I touched their collective mind. The whole experience feels like a dream. You channeled more psychic energy than any individual in recorded council history. Keeper Veltar chimed from the room's speakers, its crystalline voice carrying tones of amazement. The fact that you retained any individual identity is unprecedented. Most beings would have been completely absorbed into the collective or destroyed by the backlash. Zarahai's hand touched his arm, and through their connection Marcus felt her share the memory of what had happened from her perspective. He saw himself surrounded by cascades of psychic energy that made the ship's consciousness chamber look like the heart of a star. He felt her desperate struggle to maintain their bond as alien thoughts tried to sever it and claim him for the collective. Most remarkably, he experienced the moment when his final message of compassion had shattered the Devourer unity, freeing thousands of individual minds in a chain reaction of returning empathy. The healing process changed you in unexpected ways, Elder Thraindar observed, studying Marcus with those ancient eyes. Your psychic abilities have increased exponentially. More importantly, your neural architecture has completely restructured itself. You now possess capabilities that match or exceed those of fully developed council members. Marcus looked at his hands, and as he concentrated, he could see the quantum probability fields that surrounded every object in the room. With minimal effort, he lifted a water glass from the bedside table and held it suspended in midair, while simultaneously adjusting its molecular structure to perfect clarity. The question now, Elder Thraindar continued, is what you wish to do with these abilities. Your training was originally intended to prepare you as ambassador to your species. However, the events of the past month have created new possibilities. Ashkente stepped forward, its posture formal and respectful. The council has voted unanimously to offer you full membership with rank of navigator, equal to Zarahai. Such an offer has never been extended to a member of an uncontacted species. Marcus felt the weight of this honor, but also the implications it carried. What about humanity? About serving as ambassador and helping my people develop their own psychic potential? That mission remains if you choose to accept it, Elder Thranedar replied. But your methods will be different than originally planned. The Devourer crisis has accelerated the timeline for human contact with galactic civilization. Within 1 year, formal diplomatic relations will be established. Zarahai's markings brightened with excitement as she shared additional information through their bond. The Council had been monitoring human space during the Devourer crisis and had detected the emergence of psychic abilities in thousands of humans across multiple worlds. The stress of the near-extinction event had apparently triggered a species-wide consciousness shift. Your people are ready for the truth, she said aloud, not just about the existence of other species, but about their own potential for transcendence. Marcus stood carefully, testing his balance as he adjusted to his transformed capabilities. Through the ship's viewports he could see Earth in the distance, the blue-green world where he had been born, now safe because of actions he could barely remember taking. I want to go home, he said finally, but not as the person who left. I want to return as a bridge between humanity and everything we're about to become. Elder Thranedar's eyes swirled with approval. The Council will provide technological and philosophical guidance for human development. But the most important gift we can offer is you, one of their own who has made the journey to transcendence and can show others the path. Keeper Veltar chimed with what sounded like satisfaction. Preliminary analysis suggests that humans may achieve full consciousness integration faster than any previously contacted species. The sacrifice you made to save Navigator Zarahai created resonance pattern that is spreading through your entire genetic line. Marcus felt Zarahai's hand slip into his, and through their connection he sensed her question before she spoke it aloud. I would like to accompany you to Earth if the Council permits. Our bond makes us more effective together than either could be alone. The idea of returning home with her felt right in ways that transcended logic. Their connection had grown beyond teacher and student, beyond even love as humans typically understood it. They had become something new together, a bridge not just between species, but between different ways of existing in the universe. The Council not only permits but encourages this pairing, Elder Thranedar said with what might have been amusement. The psychic bond between you and Navigator Zarahai is itself a form of evolution. It demonstrates that consciousness can transcend not only individual limitations, but species barriers as well. As Harmony of Voices changed course toward Earth, Marcus stood at the observation deck with Zarahai beside him, watching his homeworld grow larger in the viewport. The planet looked exactly as he remembered, but his perception of it had fundamentally changed. He could sense the billions of minds across its surface, many of them beginning to stir with the same psychic potential that had saved both their species. The future stretched ahead of them, like an infinite ocean of possibilities. Humanity, taking its place among the stars, consciousness evolving beyond current limitations, the universe itself becoming aware through the beings that inhabited it. And at the center of it all was the simple truth that had started everything. Sometimes saving one life changes the entire galaxy. Marcus squeezed Zarahai's hand and felt their combined consciousness reach out toward Earth, ready to help humanity take its next great leap into transcendence. The reward for his simple act of compassion had indeed exceeded his wildest imagination. But more importantly, it had given his entire species a chance to exceed theirs as well. The age of human isolation was ending. The age of galactic consciousness was about to begin.